The Nashville Predators season is over. We'll look back at the latest missed opportunity that cost the Predators the series and where the team goes from here on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day, every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio.
Well, Ann, it was a fun ride while it lasted. The 2023-24 season now in the books for the Nashville Predators. We'll break down Game 6, which proved to be yet another missed opportunity for the Nashville Predators in a season and a series seemingly packed with missed chances this season for the Nashville Predators. Plus, we'll break down the highs and lows of the season and where the Nashville Predators go from here coming up on today's show. Plus, a bit of news. Andrew Brunette getting the Jack Adams nomination. We'll talk about what it means for him and what his outlook for the next few years as Predators head coach will be. All that is coming up on today's show. We'll get to that in a second, but first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. It's a fast-paced game that lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and great emojis for taunting your friends. Who doesn't love to do that? So download Monopoly Go now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, Ann, let us dive into the end of the Nashville Predators season. A 1-0 loss on Friday's Game 6 to the Vancouver Canucks. In a game that kind of felt eerily similar to the Penguins Game 6 from a few years ago. Tied 0-0 all the way to the end of the game before Pius Suter, Red Wings legend, put the Canucks up 1-0 with just over 1 minute left. A furious rally at the end of the game, a big scramble in front of the Vancouver net. Nashville just couldn't score, and the season ends after a 1-0 loss at home to the Vancouver Canucks. As mentioned by many people on Twitter, the Nashville Predators have now lost 7 consecutive playoff games at home.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Not ideal if you're the Nashville Predators. Have not won a elimination game at home since 2016. Have not won a home playoff game since Game 4 of the 2021 series. 0-3 at Bridgestone Arena this year, and because of that, it just feels like, boy, it's a hard series to judge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very hard to look at this series and know exactly what to take away. And honestly, for me, I think watching Vancouver going forward against Edmonton will actually help put this series in perspective for Predators fans, because I'm not sure still what to take away. Like, how much of this was what Nashville did well? How much of this was maybe Vancouver not playing the game that they wanted to play? You know, it's such a tricky series to walk away from and know how to feel about it. You know, it's tough. Great opportunities, missed opportunities. Very competitive against the team that finished first in the Pacific, but couldn't quite get it done when you think they should. Like, this is such a mixed bag when you look at this 6-game series.
Yeah, it feels like, maybe we'll feel a little bit better if Vancouver winds up winning against Edmonton, 4 or 5 games and wins 5-2, something like that this whole time. But at the same time, it also feels like that would lead us to be a little bit bitter because this was a series in which Nashville could have won. And let's
Yes.
face it, because, I know Vancouver, first off, credit to them for game 6, especially the last minute when they took the lead. And you see just how much, like there's JT Miller yeeting himself, 5 feet backwards, face first to, block a portion of the net and stop a goal from going in. You have
Right.
Elias Lindholm selling out to block a key shot late. I really thought the defense for Vancouver really were on great display there all game long. Guys like Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers, who people who we don't talk a whole lot about, just because guys like Quinn Hughes and Filip Forsberg kind of steal the show for Vancouver. But those two guys, I thought, made some really good, just old school stay-at-home defensive plays. But other than that, Nashville outshot Vancouver by, more than 20 shots this series.
Yeah.
You look back at game 3 where you lost 2-1, but you outshot Vancouver 30-12. You look back at that missed opportunity in game 4, something that I think is going to haunt the Nashville Predators for a long time. You look back at the scenario of where the Predators were in this series. They're going against Vancouver's 3rd string goalie, and you could only get 2 goals past him in the last 2 games of the series, including a shutout in game 6. It just feels like the more you break down the series, the more you look at it and go like, oh, it really feels like this is one the Nashville Predators could have won. And that's what I think makes this series so much more disappointing than, 2 years ago against Colorado, where clearly the Preds had no chance going in.
Right.
It just feels like maybe the Predators did have a chance here. They just couldn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I feel like if you're summarizing this series, really you're summarizing it by saying it's missed opportunities.
Yeah.
This was a series of so many missed opportunities. And, we talk about, where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? And I think, that is a conversation that has to happen when it comes to the Nashville Predators. And I think it's a really important conversation. Where do you go from here? What did we learn about the entire season and about this team? But I think first you have to do, like, I call it a hockey autopsy or a hawktopsy. Like, you have to really break down this series and say, what killed us? Like, what killed the Nashville Predators in these series? And I think the big picture word is missed opportunities. That is what cost the Nashville Predators this series. And I'll tell you this, truly, I'm surprised that it was missed opportunities that cost Nashville the series. Because I think it could have been so many other things. It could have been JT Miller. It could have been Quinn Hughes. It could have been so many other things that cost Nashville this series. But it really came down to a handful of bounces that didn't go Nashville's way, a handful of mistakes that Vancouver capitalized on. And I think you have to, before you can move on and say all of the great things about this season and where the Predators go from here, I think you have to look at, like, hey, what killed us? Like, what killed the Nashville Predators? And I think there's a handful of small things that doomed this team in this series.
Yeah, we'll get into that coming up here shortly. We'll go into the next block about some of the specific things. Real quick, though, Anne, when we look back at Game 6 specifically, do you have a one word? I know it's been a few games, but this is our last chance of the year, so why not? One word to describe Game 6.
I do, and it's a little bit morbid, but hear me out because I swear it's accurate. My one word.
Go for it at this point.
Is Graham's visitation. So my grandmother passed away in 2011. She was the only grandparent I ever knew. 95 years old, very, very close to her. And I know it sounds strange that at 95, it was a surprising it was a surprising passing, but it was a surprising passing. And tons of people came to the visitation, tons and tons of people did. And the thing that they kept saying in the line was like, oh, she lived a long life. And I'm like, yes, she did. But in that moment, there was nothing about that was comforting to me, because I was like, I would still like her around for 95 more years. And I think that's how game 6 felt to me. Like, yes, there's comfort to take away from this series, but after that game 6, losing the way they did, where you really felt like that game was going to go to overtime, and then Vancouver gets that late goal and Nashville can't equalize it. Like, it felt like somebody saying, well, she lived a long life. Like, we're not there yet. We're not at the Predators did way better than you thought they were going to do all season. It's not that that's not true. It's just that after game 6, there was nothing comforting about, the Predators did better than you thought, because game 6 was another missed opportunity. So for me, it was like a flashback to my grandmother's visitation. God bless Grandma Ruth.
Yeah, I get it. Like, not where you want to hear in that moment. And first off, thank you for sharing that, because that was sweet. And I think a lot of people relate to that. But yeah, it is sort of like, sort of a thing where, maybe in a couple of days and we do this podcast again and we're able to kind of appreciate a little bit more what the Predators accomplished. But right now it's, it's a little bit more, let us be mad about this, let us be sad about this, than it is like, oh, let's celebrate what the Predators did do. And hey, we're actually gonna have a podcast in a couple of days where we probably actually do talk about what the Predators did well. But yeah, right now it's just really hard not to be a little frustrated with how things went to end the season for the Nashville Predators. As Ann mentioned, a big topic of conversation is what went wrong against the Vancouver Canucks. What are some things that doomed the Nashville Predators in this series? We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a little bit. First, though, I want to mention today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the winning formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive in the garage. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much, much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Ann, we talked about this a little bit before the break, but it would behoove us to talk about the series a little bit more and talk about what went wrong for the Nashville Predators against the Vancouver Canucks. So what's something, Ann, that stood out to you in terms of maybe something the Nashville Predators didn't do well, or maybe something the Vancouver Canucks just did way better than Nashville?
Yeah, and you know what's funny is for all of these, it's a little bit hard to know whether Nashville didn't do it well or whether Vancouver outplayed Nashville in some of these specific situations. But for me, the one thing that I think jumps out is the power play. Nashville went 2 for 22 in this series. In game 6, they had a 4-minute power play, y'all. 4 minutes. And at the end of the game, they had a power play. Now, like you pointed out earlier, it was literally like the Vancouver net was a clown car because it was packed so full of Canucks players to keep the puck out, which, you know what? You do what you got to do.
It worked, obviously.
It worked. Like there was no space. They went 0 for 5 in game 3 on the power play. There were times where Nashville couldn't even get set up in the zone. And when you have a series that is as tight as this one was, a power play goal is the difference between a win and a lose. And look, you have to give credit to Vancouver's penalty kill. You know, obviously Nashville had trouble setting up but they also kept Nashville very much to the outside perimeter when they had, an opportunity to set up. And here's what is so frustrating about this to me is that we know Nashville can do it because, they had the second best power play in the league from February 1st to the end of the regular season.
Which is wild to think about.
Which tells you that they were really bad at the beginning of the season because they didn't finish, but in the middle for the whole season. But during that 18-game point streak, 24% on the power play. They can do it, but it just didn't happen in this series. And again, do you say, man, Nashville, you missed opportunities. You weren't setting up. You weren't moving the puck well. You weren't skating it into the zone. There wasn't enough movement. Or is the takeaway, damn, Vancouver, you just wouldn't give us anything? I'm not sure, but I do think the power play could have changed this entire series. Not just one game, the whole series.
And the crazy thing about that, Anne, is the Vancouver Canucks penalty kill wasn't great. During the regular season, they were 18th in the entire NHL in penalty killing percentage. So it's not like they were going up against this vaunted team that had done so well. They did really well in this postseason.
Right.
Like I said, give them credit because the Vancouver Canucks did a lot of really good things. And I feel like we're not, obviously this is a Nashville Predators podcast, so we're going to talk about this from the Preds perspective, but I feel like we do need to give Vancouver their credit here a little bit for how well they played. But again, it's not like the Preds were going against this top-rated penalty killing unit, and that's the reason that they, bungled it. And it kind of feels like the power play and the special teams conversation at overall is a sign of skill. And I think for me, that just goes to show you that as well as Nashville did this year, you could tell certain parts of this series, like the comparison of the two power plays, in which the Vancouver skill advantage came into play a little bit here, at least in terms of the depth, because that's the power play was certainly, I think, one area in which you look at Nashville and say, okay, thank God for Forsberg. Thank God for Josi. Thank goodness Ryan O'Reilly is having a good season, but we need more. We need more top guys who are capable of scoring 90 points a year. And to me, that's always been in every playoff series for the Nashville Predators for as long as I've been watching this team, which is 25 years now. That seems to have always been the X factor.
Yeah.
It seems to always be the X factor is the Nashville Predators. They have the grit. They have, the intensity. They can win those gritty games. They can win those close games. But when it comes down to pure skill, when you need skill guys to step up, that's always been the Nashville Predators' shortcoming. It's always that.
I think that's definitely going to be a conversation we're going to have in the offseason because I agree with you. I think this series really highlights, hey, Nashville, you've got to address this. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Another thing that I think went wrong for me, Anne, is, second chance opportunities.
Yes.
I think that's something that also hurt the Nashville Predators a little bit. You're going against the second and third string goalie this series. We talked about it in the previews for both games 5 and, game 6, where this feels like Nashville is going to have to really challenge, the opposing goaltender. It just doesn't feel like they really did that. And a lot of that was just because they didn't have guys, follow up, get in the crease, other than that big scramble at the end where they were just putting everything they could at net and crashing the net and everything like that. We saw a lot of plays where, I saw the same play 3 or 4 times in game 6 where it was, skate behind the net. Vancouver would leave a bit open. Somebody would just take a shot on net, but there's no follow-up. It would just be a rebound, a bounce up into the corner, or Seeloffs would, freeze it, or Vancouver would clear, and that was it. They could never really get that sustained pressure, really at any point during the season or during the series.
Right.
And I feel like that was even in the games where they were out shooting Vancouver, like, 30-12 or anything like that. There never seemed like, outside of maybe one or two times, like just these long periods where it just felt like Nashville was swarming, that they were buzzing, that they were really getting sustained pressure on, that they were getting rebounds, deflections, collecting loose pucks in the corner, preventing a clear, preventing a breakout. It just never seemed like there were any of those moments in which Nashville really did that. And as a result, you have your backup and third string goalie for Vancouver really only having to make like one, maybe two saves, and then poof, like the sequence is over. And that I do think that made it a little bit easier on them.
I agree with you. And I think so many people may want to talk about, how did Nashville not do better against the second and third string goaltender? And it's exactly what you said. There just weren't multiple opportunities. They just didn't generate chance after chance. They didn't find the rebounds. And so I don't know that it really mattered in this series who was in net for Vancouver, because Nashville just didn't pressure whoever was in net for the team like they really wanted to. Of course, Thatcher Demko, Vezina finalist. Of course, Vancouver would be even better with him in net. But I don't feel like goaltending for Vancouver was really a factor because of what you said. I just don't think Nashville got the pressure on net that they needed to.
Yeah. And Vancouver did. And was there anything else about this series that you want to talk about in terms of something where Vancouver just did better than Nashville?
For me, and I hate to say this, I think it's interesting when you look at some of the big picture stats, but I think maybe Nashville didn't get quite enough from their best players. Of course, Filip Forsberg had 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. Nyquist, Josi, Ryan O'Reilly, they each only had a goal. You look at what Nashville did defensively against Vancouver, and they did a great job. They limited JT Miller to 1 goal, Quinn Hughes, no goals, but Brock Besser, 4 goals, and then you had, 4 players for them that had 2 goals each. And so I think you just needed a little bit more from your best guys. I think it's interesting, though, in a series where there was basically, I think there's only a 1 goal difference in the entire series between these two teams. Nashville had 11 goal scorers. Vancouver only had 6.
Yeah.
But we just needed just maybe a little bit more from Phil, from Roman, from Ryan O'Reilly, from Nyquist, and just didn't quite get it. So I think that there is a fraction of difference that could have happened in this series had the Predators gotten just a little bit more from their top guys.
Not only did Brock Besser have 4 goals, but he also made a really good play on the, to set up that eventual game-winning goal at the end of Game 6 too. So
yeah,
easily the MVP of the series for me.
Great, yeah, he had a great series. He did.
Coming up, we will look at what happens next for the Nashville Predators, plus some good news because, hey, you got to have something. We'll talk about Andrew Brunette being named a Jack Adams finalist coming up here in just a sec.
First, want to let you know this episode's brought to you by Monopoly Go. We're going to pause here to talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're thinking. Hey, that's a penalty. We already talked about this, but friends, there is just so much good stuff to talk about in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. There are cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
All right, and we'll talk about this a little bit more coming up later this week as well. But I want to take a brief moment and maybe summarize this season in the context of where are the Predators at in terms of building the team that Barry Trotz wants to build, which is that sustainable winner, that team that can compete every year, that's not going to lose in the first round, that's going to compete deep and deep and deep into the playoffs. I don't know about you, but I go back and forth about what did we learn about this team this year? Because it seems like on one hand, yes, there's a lot to celebrate for Nashville this year. He had Filip Forsberg career year, 6 in the NHL in goal scoring for a team that has been anemic offensively. Over the last 6-7 years or so. That's a big deal. Tied for the most goals as a team in franchise history this year. Their best scoring season since that 2007 Paul Kariya team. That's a big deal. They're in elite company in all these stats. Top 10 in scoring, top 5 in expected goals, top 8, I think, in Corsi this year. So there's a lot to look at, and it's like, oh, the Nashville Predators did a lot well this year. They certainly improved over last year, and they've certainly proved that, oh, they can win games the way Colorado and Tampa have historically won games. That suffocating puck possession, getting volume, controlling the puck, having good offense. They've proved that. But the more I break down, it's like, okay, but is that going to continue into the next couple of years? Because you look at the key contributors. Roman Josi, he's going to be 35, folks. And if we, it's same age as Erik Karlsson. We keep talking, it's like Erik Karlsson's past his prime. We talk about, Filip Forsberg, obviously still in his prime, but career year for Gustav Nyquist. He's 33, about to be 30, or 34, about to be 35, and injury prone. Are we really going to get that again? For 4 or 5 more years? Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough, their best seasons in years. They're in their mid to late 30s. Are we really going to get enough of those seasons again moving forward? When you and I talked about this before the season started, and the big thing we wanted to know, or the big thing we wanted to see, was we wanted to see contributions from the young people. We wanted to see the young guys, other than maybe like Forsberg and Josi and UC Saros. We wanted to see young guys playing a big role in carrying this team forward. Do you feel like we accomplished that this year?
I don't. Not in the volume to which I think we all expected. And it's not even about results. I think it's about who played, who carried the team. Because at the beginning of the year, we were counting on Evangelista, Novak, Glass, Tomasino, Parsonen. There was this little group that we thought, okay, this is the year they're going to break out. Tomasino and Parsonen spent a lot of the season in Milwaukee. Cody Glass, I think Glass only played like 41 games this season. Tommy Novak, I think, had a very good season, but was a little bit quiet in the postseason. So there's definitely opportunities for growth and, for him in the postseason. I do think Luke Evangelista has been a bright spot. I think that he's headed in the right trajectory. But I agree with you. So much about the success of this team rides on the shoulders of veterans. So what happens next? What happens next? This was an amazing first year of a retool. I think the veterans were very, very valuable, but you still have to bring up a crop of young players. And I'm not sure we saw from the young players this season what we really needed to see to make us think, hey, we are 2 to 3 years away from deep cup runs.
Yeah. This isn't
nerve-wracking.
This isn't sort of that improvement that you could look at and say, oh, the Preds are on the right track. They're you bring this core back, 3 years from now, everybody improves and they're 100% a cup contender. This, like you said, this is one where it's like in 3 to 5 years, the people that are carrying this team are going to be retired or close to retirement or at the end of their careers. we wanted so much to see, a playoff series or even a first round exit that was led by, Phil Tomasino and Luke Evangelista and Juuso Parssinen and Cody Glass and those younger guys coming through and sort of not being the main guys or carrying the team or anything, but being being key contributors, being like the main source of depth. And to make it clear, totally happy for guys like Colton Sissons having career years. Totally happy for guys like Michael McCarron and Kiefer Sherwood, Mark Jankowski, Cole Smith to come out of nowhere and have big years. But, you couldn't help but feel let down at maybe the way that some of the younger guys were minimized as the season went on. So it just doesn't feel like, there's a lot to celebrate, and we can talk about what the Preds need to do moving forward, but it just doesn't feel like we're all in on the Preds moving in the right direction. It feels like there's still some unknown to talk about moving forward.
One thing I would say is that we aren't going to be able to rely on the veterans going forward, in the sense, like you're saying, like you're looking down the road, you need to be developing these young players. But I do think it's been so important this season to have that veteran leadership, because there really has been a reset, I think, in the locker room, in kind of not work ethic, but just understanding what it takes and the level to which you have to play and you have to work consistently. So I do think there are steps forward, but I don't think this is the future team that Barry Trotz thinks is going to win a cup in 2 to 3 years. We need more development. We need more of these young players coming up. I agree with you in that. I think that it's been a great season. And of course, we're going to dive into all the different reasons why and all that stuff, and, coming up here, but it maybe didn't look the way we thought it was going to.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we will talk about what the Predators need to do moving forward coming up here in a show later this week. First, though, Ann, let's end on a positive note. One bright spot has been Andrew Brunette's first season as a Nashville Predators head coach, nominated for the Jack Adams Award, the NHL's award for best coach. 100%, Ann, should be deserved.
Yes, absolutely believe that this is hands down an easy nomination for the Jack Adams. Don't know for sure that he's going to win it. I think Rick Tocchet has a good case. I think you could make arguments either way. And Rick Bowness, of course, from the Winnipeg Jets is the other nominee, which very, very great. But love that he got this honor. I do want to play this clip because this is his second nomination. He was nominated for the Florida Panthers, but this was what Andrew Brunette had to say when we asked him about being nominated for the Jack Adams.
Oh, obviously, it's a tremendous honor. Last time didn't go quite as well. I think I lost my job a little while later, so I don't know how to take it anymore.
Checked his contract status. I think he's still locked in. So
I think he's good. Like, I don't think Andrew Brunette should lose any sleep over what is going to happen next season with his coaching position. But I love that for him.
Just to confirm, Paul Maurice looks like he's keeping his job in Florida, right? He's not going to be looking for another job anytime soon, right?
Right.
He's not going to chase him out of Nashville. I think one of the bright spots on this team for sure is how Andrew Brunette handled this team. And, we just talked about it, Ann, about how we were a little bit disappointed that maybe some of the younger players weren't the ones carrying this team. And I think if you asked Andrew Brunette and Barry Trotz, they would also be a little bit disappointed. But I think one of the biggest things about this Andrew Brunette coaching job this year is how he sort of adjusted his plan, how he wasn't afraid to say, all right, Mark Jankowski, I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. So you're going to get 15 minutes this game. Or, not being afraid to put Michael McCarron out there in big moments, not being afraid to put guys like Jeremy Lauzon and Alexander Carrier out there every single shift of a home game against Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon on the Avalanche, not being afraid to put those guys against tough guys. When you break down everything Brunette did this year, not just the offensive philosophy that led Nashville to revamp as a team, but how he handled certain players, how he brought the best out of certain guys, how he is able to look at somebody like a Cole Smith and say, okay, I'm going to use you a little bit different than the way John Hines was using you. Or, like he did with, Colton Sissons, kind of rising his role a little bit more and kind of using him as sort of a plug and play guy in different places led to a career best year for Colton Sissons. I think when you look at some of the individual, maybe small parts of this team that led to the Nashville Predators' success that year, that's when you see, I think, the beauty of the coaching job that Andrew Brunette did this year.
Yes, it's not just a collective record. It's not just where they finished in the regular season. It's what he was able to pull out of individual players to make this team successful. I agree with you. And I would love to see him win this award. I think what he's done with this team in the transition that they're in with the roster that he had, mad props to Andrew Brunette.
Yeah, this feels like a Rick Tocchet win.
It does,
which is funny because I think the other major award is the Norris, and that also feels like a Vancouver Canucks win, going to Quinn Hughes. But I think the Nashville Predators have a lot to be proud of for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I think Andrew Brunette proved why Barry Trotz felt like he was the guy for the job.
Yeah, right there with you, Ann. As we mentioned, there is a lot to talk about for the Nashville Predators team now that we're moving into the offseason. What comes next? What do the Nashville Predators need to do to actually become an elite team down the road? That's a topic of conversation we'll have tomorrow. Plus, we'll start looking at some player report cards and who should Preds fans cheer for now in the postseason. All coming up this week on the Locked On Predators podcast. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Back with an all-new episode tomorrow. We'll see you then.